Hi guys, Matt Rhodes here, and I am here once again with Marcus. How are you, mate?
I'm not so bad. Not so bad.
Okay, good. And we're going to cover the Arnold Strongman Classic UK. And in you, we have a man that was on the ground there. So you can give us insight from seeing it in person, which is always a good thing. So,
Yeah, I was there on Saturday. There on the
yeah,
Saturday morning, all the way through, and watched the first two events. Wasn't there on the Sunday, sadly, but yeah, got a vibe for what was going on.
okay, cool. So we'll get to that. Obviously, I watched it via stream, via the link. I will say that it's a bit confusing because I think a lot of people assumed it would be on the Rogue website because we just had the Arnolds a couple of weeks ago. I actually thought it would be there, not researching it. And it turned out you had to kind of sign up via your email on the Arnold site. Um, it was great. It was free once again. We get a live stream for free. Awesome. So no complaints about that. But what I would say is I think they didn't really advertise it too well. So I had tons of messages asking me, where's the link? How can I watch it? Um, so it was probably just a bit of feedback, something that would be helpful. Did you know about where the link was going to be? How did you find it?
No, and even on the Sunday when I returned home, I was very surprised to see it's not on the Road channel.
Yeah.
As a continuation on from America. But yeah, I had to do a little bit of fishing. Same thing. Went through the process of having to register, and then I could understand a little bit more about what people were saying, the discrepancy between being live and obviously
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
the live is. Yeah,
Yeah. Anyway, we found it, and as I say, we're so grateful as always to get to watch Elite Strongman for free. It's cool, and again, just like at Columbus, it's pretty effortless to watch. It flows between the men's and the women's right the way through, so it's always cool. Um, let's just start. In the end, we only had an eight-man lineup. All 11 athletes from Columbus were invited there, and of course, many were advertised to compete there, but almost inevitably, guys were going to drop out with the Arnolds being so heavy, so tough as it is in Columbus. So we ended up with just five of the guys competing there, but it seemed they had no contingency plan whatsoever. So they were down to seven guys. Rauno Heiner was invited 5 days out. So we just had eight guys, and we also had just Gavin Bilton from Britain, which is a bit strange when it's UK's just to have one Brit there. I mean, you had like Paul Smith on Instagram saying, I'm ready to go, bring me in. That was a bit odd, don't you think, that there wasn't kind of more prep for athletes dropping out?
yeah. With the fact that you know what the Arnold's is, historically very very heavy. The chances of walking away unscathed are not necessarily slim, but you're of the understanding that it's asking a lot of people to do back to backs.
Yeah.
In the guys that you've got going in, it doesn't take too much. We know Mateus is finding his feet again. Hathor is literally just out the woods. The fact that he was able to do the both, I think, is a testament to his work. Excuse me, but not having not having the foresight in this case, and you just need to be a little bit better planned, because I do feel for some of the people that would have looked at the names, looked at who should have been there by advertisement, and of course they're not. We know as either organisers, supporters, that the chances of that happening sometimes it's down to the lap of the gods when it comes to injuries, and also self-preservation. We've got Worlds coming up as well,
Yeah.
but again, there should be, I think, a roster of people. I know that they look along the lines of saying they want elite names for an elite competition,
Mhm.
but what I think for the most part, most fans would rather see a complement of athletes rather than just a handful of those that are probably carrying a few knocks anyway.
Yeah, I think there's a strong argument if it's going to be so close to Columbus to really have another tier of athletes. So the guys that didn't quite get the qualification or the invite for the Arnold's Columbus, those are the guys that just missed out because there's plenty, as we know, of really high level guys that could then perform at the best of their ability at the UK. And I mean, even out of the eight that were there, Maxime obviously dropped out of Columbus, Ohio. People were shocked to see him there. And as we saw in the final event, he didn't even take part in a deadlift. So even of the guys that were there, they weren't fully fit. So I think that's something that the UKs could look at in future, perhaps using a different roster of guys.
Yeah, and we've only got to look at the American that came in and look what he was able to do as announced as a rookie. And let's be fair, most rookies have probably got 6 to 7 years of experience under their belt. Then none of them are overnight. But we've got such a depth of talent, and I would rather sometimes see someone unearthing a diamond from the dirt than just say, these are the standards that we work to. This is how we are. You have to earn your sort of slot. Obviously, Rauno's been at the Arnolds before, but ultimately the thing that got compromised there was actually the quality of the event itself, because you don't have the depth of talent. So it is a bit of a shame.
Yeah. But I mean, huge credit to the 5 guys that did do both tournaments, because that takes some doing. So huge props to those guys that are able to do it. Yeah. And, I don't think we talked about it last week, but they paid recognition to David Webster at both tournaments, the guys wearing kilts and things like that. That's the kind of classy things that Arnold and Terry Todd in his time and Jan Todd now are always kind of involved in. And it is like that bit of touch of class, isn't it? That goes a long way.
Well, it's also just having an eye on the bigger picture. Ultimately the people that work within this, the remuneration isn't great, especially from the early days. But these people are stitched into the fabric of the sport, and it's nice to have that acknowledgement.
Yeah. And I think people underestimate, because Terry Todd quite rightly took all the laudits, at the Arnolds, but Jan is an equally huge part of that, as the Stark Center also. The amount of time and effort she puts into what that has become, which is just an incredible place there in Texas. So yeah, Jan's just continuing something that her and Terry did for 2 decades already. So yeah.
It's nice to see him there, seeing him with boots on the ground. Just get out as well, get in amongst all the viewers, the fans. Take into account what they'll be talking about, because again, it's breaking out your bubble, which is perfect. So see him actually there, hopefully sort of interacting with people, getting the viewer's standpoint, and it'll just get better and better, because there are a few points that could be improved.
Yeah. So coming on to that, I messaged you actually saying, are the microphones, not on the crowd there, or is the atmosphere flat? And that was the main kind of feedback everyone was giving me from the stream. God, it seems quiet there. How was it on the ground there?
The biggest noise realistically were the commentators. That was the PA system for that would have carried over any crowd. There were times and lulls. It was an odd setup in terms of where I was with friends and family. It was a bit hit and miss in terms of spacings, and there weren't many people around us. And you've got quite a lot of the fans that are all the way to the back, which is trying to get a healthy balance. There were people there. But certainly from where I was with the photos I took as well, there's massive gaps. But the noise levels weren't up to much.
Why is that? Because we've got the crowds in Britain. We always say we should have a world's strongest man, because fans will flock out in their thousands. Giants Live produces. I was expecting a really big atmosphere there. What do you think happened?
Yeah, I don't know whether it's down to timings. It's it starts at 11 o'clock in the morning. Where that plays a little bit of a part. Also the expo side of things, when people are walking around, it doesn't take too much if everyone's walked expos before. They are draining, and there's only so much. You've got different talking points going on, rather than it being a singular focus. People drift in, drift out, so you haven't got that necessarily that focal engagement on exactly what's happening. I did enjoy last year's, where it was done later in the evening. It's almost like the show's wrapped up and in you go, because it's that I think when you're going in specifically for that, to be fair, as was I, to go and watch Andrea and a few others, but yeah, it was just lacking a little bit of edge.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like you say, if people were specifically buying a ticket just for that, perhaps that would have been a difference. So let's get into it. First event was log. They did exactly what I hoped they would do, which they didn't do in Columbus, which gave 2 options on the log. We had 175 kg, just checking here, 386 pounds, or 195 kilograms, 430 pounds. perfect. It stops all the guys zeroing because there's two options there. So the main talking points were that Thor selected the lighter log and did 1 rep. We know his pressing's not back. It was obviously a smart move from him, but this is the one big thing he's got to get back, isn't it? The pressing.
Yeah. Yeah. When you're listening to people say, right, okay, the jump, it's only a 20-kilo jump, but the log is totally different as well. The shears, it is vast. So he boxed clever, but we've also got to take into account as well, how Thor, as we say, he's only just out of the woods in terms of injury. He's only just come back into the sport. The fact that he made it, I think, is phenomenal in itself. Boxing clever. He knows competitively at the moment he's going to be, I think, realistically 6 to 8 months off. You need to have gone through a little bit of fire just to understand what you're up against. But no, I think him doing what he's done, got back out. He's just playing the game, got through another comp. He's come through unscathed. He's got time now. Go away, work. You know what you're up against, and I think it puts us all in a better spot because I think we'll end up with a better athlete because of it.
Yeah, I agree. Mitchell Hooper joint first with 3 reps, kind of business as usual. We know what we're getting from him is top form and just doing so well. But the big story there is Lucas Hatton. You know, people call him an unknown. The guy won American Strongest Man. He beat Bobby Thompson, Rob Kearney, you know, a strong field there. Gabriel Pina, I think, competed there. So, you know, maybe this shouldn't be a surprise. I picked him for podium beforehand on Instagram. So, but obviously people aren't so familiar with him. But he got the 3 reps and joint first. So talk about starting with a bang. Awesome, yeah?
Yeah, and he's a very, for one of the American athletes as well, he's very understated. Yeah. He's very understated. And that's the thing. I think of a confident, bullish, you know, again, you're going into something as well. You're right to feel a little bit, oh, is this my level? My God, what a way to show it is. Because he took ownership. It's a huge log. That on any other bit of kit, that weight is a totally different proposition. On this, it's going to expose you. And I'll tell you what, he looked so close as well. He looked like he had a game plan. He looked like he was probably about 95% on it as well. And a tiny little bit of luck, I say, a little bit of bullishness, maybe in the first couple rather than what if. And I think that 4th would have been there as well.
Yeah. Nearly always, even the guys capable at their first very, very big show like this, choke it a bit, completely understandably. The fact he didn't means I think we've got a monster through.
Yeah. And you're right to use the word monster as well, because if anyone was there firsthand and watched that lad walk around, if you want to know the structure of someone as well, take a look at the quads. It's very rare that I've seen that. That's old school. That is old school, sort of Baden horse, absolute monster quads. That boy is built like a truck.
I saw a funny photo where he was trying to sit in a chair and he was too big for it. Yeah, his legs not fitting in there.
Yeah. He seems a really, really good lad as well, which, again, you know, regardless of rivalry, so on and so forth, competition, you are on a circuit, you are mixing with people.
Yeah.
And yeah, he seems a decent proposition, but again, I think that lad with confidence is another few points up.
Yeah, agreed. Then we went into the farmers. Brutal event, those farmers. 181 kilograms, 400 pounds in each hand. Those things were chaffing against their legs. They were unstable. That's a brutal event. Thor's grip has definitely improved. We saw it with the frame carrier, now with that. So that's boding very well. I don't think any of us expected Thor to suddenly have a massively improved grip. I'm not quite sure where that's even come from, but it has. Bobby Thompson also, excellent performance there. Mitchell Hooper again, doing what he needed to do to win. You know, he had targets to meet and he met those distances. That's what he does. And that's why he's the best, because he's consistently there all the time. I think the main talking point there was Loz was there on the microphone and he was screaming at his athletes, in particular Bobby, don't give up, you're not giving up. The other commentator said, oh, he's not letting him off the stage until, you know, he's really done. When we talk about impartiality, it's almost impossible for anyone in the position that Loz was there to be impartial. But that's all the more reason just not to have a coach on the mic, on the stage, because otherwise you can argue it's only fair for all athletes then have their coach on the mic, on the stage. They didn't have Loz on commentary in Columbus. why put him on here? I just, it was bound to kind of cause a talking point where there didn't need to be one.
Yeah, it's in terms of you again, if you're invested in your people, you're never going to be impartial. You can't be,
Yeah.
because they're your people.
Yeah, I wouldn't be in that position.
And you're, yeah, and again, ultimately, has he done the right thing for his people and himself? Yeah, exactly. He's done his job, and he's done what's been asked of him. But again, it's down to organisations just to say, right, okay, who are the right people for this? In terms of the commentary as a whole, you know, actually, the summarising thing, I'm kind of glad Loz was there on that bit, because in terms of some of the details, like when it's just like a little bit of research, like we said before, going into.
Yeah, that was missing at Columbus, yeah.
Or as an athlete, you're just missing those little bits. And those little bits are important, especially to those that are out there competing.
Yeah.
But yeah, in terms of the extra voice you're getting across a microphone, does it add a little bit of help? Yeah, it does.
Yeah,
it does.
Yeah. Okay, going into the power medley, yoke into 3 dumbbells. Again, the big story is Hatton. His pressing is incredible. Only him, sorry, completed all 3 dumbbells as well as the yoke. He won the event. Super impressive, wasn't it? Again, that's not an event you would expect a new guy on the block to be winning of all the events.
No, just to go back to something just very quickly as well, when you're looking to invite someone in to take up a spot and you take into account your events, I feel a little bit sorry for Rauno. I really do, because if you're going to be thrown in and you are making up the numbers, because otherwise you'd have had your invite. But when you look at those first 2 events and go, pressing event, 175 and 195, on any other log, that's 210, and then you look at anything with grip, and Rauno's just got to be just like, well, I'm screwed for the first 2 events. There's no point in me being it, But again, you go back to the next one. Lucas he looked unfazed by this time. And again, he's a massive, massive unit. So people sort of say, oh, he's gassing. If you got those quads, you are gassing too.
Yeah.
They're consuming litres of oxygen, but he looked like he had a good strategy for it. He managed his time brilliantly well, and ultimately delivered. That's it. He delivered.
That's solid coaching there, solid technique, and solid execution, because dumbbell is the one that, everyone gets caught out on, apart from the very top few.
And you're honest with lighting. An overhead press can all of a sudden, you can feel dialed in, but all of a sudden that's going, how many people do you see put a log, a dumbbell, an axle behind them?
Yeah. Probably one of the biggest talking points, something I made a big fuss about on that, was Big Z was the referee, the judge, referee, whatever you want to call it. Now, he didn't give Mitchell Hooper the down signal when Mitchell got that dumbbell, the big dumbbell overhead, because he said he didn't have it under control, because as always, it was out to the side. Now we've seen Mitchell get very, very favorable calls at World's Strongest Man, at Rogue, at the Arnold's on the Stone last week or 2 weeks ago. This time I would say it was much closer, but Big Z, who we know holds this sport in the higher standards, as he should, he didn't give it, because when you look at all the other lifts, and I'll put this on the screen, the guys' lifts compared to that one of Hooper's was not the same, despite what people think. In my opinion, Big Z got it spot on. Is that how you saw it?
Yeah, bang on. And it's in terms of, if you're out in front, it's the analogy for it is like when you get penalties in soccer. If you're a successful team and you're in the opposition box a lot more, you are likely to get more penalties. Mm-hmm. In terms of Mitchell Hooper, he's out in front. If in the amount of reps that guy's going to go through, in comparison to everyone else, if he's looking at an average of 8 reps on certain implements, mm-hmm. other people look at 3. If he gets one more favourable decision because a referee is just like going through the, there's a chance it can happen. The one thing that made a bit of a difference on this, and it's taken a little bit of trying to get used to, because he is a very different proposition, but I've seen the like before, and there have always been the guys that you look at, especially in a team event, and just go, that guy can either win us everything or he can destroy our team. And do you know what? I've thought long and hard about this, because I've thought about some of the interactions I've had with Mitchell, listened to what he's had to say. And the one thing I'll actually come out of this, which surprised me, I'd pick him. Because one couple of things now, I've started to see a little humour. I've seen a little acceptance And I've also started to see a little bit of nous in how he goes about it. Because the humour when he had said to
Magnus, yeah.
Magnus about swapping, I thought in that moment, I think it's fantastic. But also when you've got the, not necessarily humility to do it, but when you've got the humour to do that, that's your competitive side. But that also shows, I think, in a cold light of day, not that you'd care that you get given something and it wins you, but I think it matters still. I think the cleanliness of a lift will matter to him when, you know, because I think now, because he is that good, no doubt, I think it will now be a case of, right, okay, how do I make it even better?
Mm-hmm.
So I think standard will be applied to him now.
I think we saw a lot there, because it's also not the case that he just doesn't have the technique to get the dumbbell where it should be, because there's 2 dumbbells before that where he got good lifts quite correctly from Big Z, and you saw the position, his body position, where his arm was, the alignment, he got it in the right place. So he did not have the ability to get that heaviest dumbbell where it should be. So it's not that he's incapable of that position. He just didn't on that one. So then it raises the question, is he able to go back into training and get the very heaviest dumbbells where it needs to be?
Well, I think the thing to do is actually look at some of the training, and it's the same with you know, people over the years historically will be especially good dumbbell pressers, Alexi, where it's metronomic and it takes time, but you look through the early training, of course, you're not always going to get them in favourable positions. Another which has exploited that as over the time is Evan Singleton. Another guy that whereas again a little bit of time they suddenly become a little bit more linear. But if it had been that one dumbbell 4 times, I'd probably say out of 4 of them would have been quite correct.
Yeah, yeah. And look, Mitchell went on to win the tournament, and because he didn't get that call, there can be no disputes about anything. So it's actually better for the sport, better for Mitchell, because no one can question his win and say, oh, he got a dodgy decision there. He didn't.
Yeah, exactly.
He was ref very toughly by Big Z, and he won the tournament. So then you stop all the questions and you stop all the arguments. So I think it was excellent, and I was delighted to see Big Z taking charge of pressing, because
it's a good standard to be held to, and if you are that way inclined as well, you know that you come out the other side of it. Sometimes it sucks to come second or be beaten, but if you're held to a standard and just go, what do I really want? Do I want to win, you know, compromised, or did I just get beaten by a better man? Well, sometimes be beaten better man. You know, that's the thing. I thought the whole thing. And again, it's not, you know, he put a shift in. Mitchell could have gone about this in second gear if he wanted to. Mm-hmm. It'd probably done okay. But on the day, you know, deadlift as well, he put a shift in.
Oh, yeah.
And when you've got people turning up and they're already down on numbers, that's the one thing I certainly can't take away from him on that one as well, because I think that's understanding people have rocked up. You know, not everyone's going to like you. He is, in some respects, he's a little bit of a heel, you know, for the sport, because he divides the room. That's only good. He's finding his feet, but in terms of an athlete, his performance, I can't knock him. I thought he's flawless.
Yeah, it's no problem for the sport, because a heel sells better than anyone. So it's no problem whatsoever.
And what a benchmark if you're a young up-and-coming athlete, rather than just walking in, just going, right, okay, I've got to go through it. No, you have to be on it.
Yeah.
Because a guy that come back in is going to struggle as well.
You know, I will say, you know, I had people disagreeing with me online about the fact that I said Big Z got it right and enforced it. It's no coincidence that probably the 2 guys in the sport that enforce strict judging more than anybody are Big Z and Brian Shaw. I think people should look at that and think, okay, there's a reason that it's those 2 guys. I think it says a lot, yeah.
Yeah, without.
After that, Marcus, we went into the sandbag toss. Now, just one quick point. The women's before the men's, my God, it went on. I think, do you think the main problem was they got the increments wrong? So, you know, there weren't big enough jumps, because they really dragged that one out, where it made it difficult to watch, didn't it?
Yeah. It's in terms of as an event, it's a Highland Games event. It's good to watch. I think it's a singular thing. The way, and I have to admit, I do like the fact that the women are mixed in with the men, because you're not sat there for these big chunks of time with nothing to watch.
I think it's perfect. I can't understand why anybody moans. perfectly, the men and the women fill the gap between each other's events perfectly. Otherwise,
Yeah,
you have dead space. I don't understand
and,
why people have a problem with that.
and there's always a really good talking point. There's always something
Yeah.
within, Sam, Nadia, Andrew, no matter who, everyone had a little bit of moment in the sun.
Yeah.
Brilliant to see. That event, dragged. And then, because it is what it is. You're throwing a small bag of sand over a bar, and until it's like, again, it's a little bit different. I don't know why it's a bit different when you've got the little metal thing with the old proper weight over bar. This just looked a bit. It looked a bit sort of school setup, really.
Yeah, I get it because of tradition, Highland Games and things, but it just dragged. That's the truth.
Yeah.
And then we had
I
the
think,
men's. We had the men's. Thor, of course, won it so easily. There wasn't many talking points there. Perhaps credit to Gav Bilton, who we didn't touch on, but he got injured on the yoke. But
yeah,
overall for Gav, I think it was a disappointing tournament. I was expecting very big things from Gav,
yeah,
but to his credit, he carried on right the way through. So big credit for Gav for that.
yeah. So a few lads that held it together. Like Max was held together by spit and sawdust. Gav, they put in for the crowd, and Gav's rocking a new body, and he's finding his feet into that as well. He's starting to look the part. You now need a little bit of luck to go with it, but is he getting to the point of where he's a legitimate threat across the board? He's getting there. He is getting there. A couple of years as well, But no, they say they all the lads, they did put a shift in.
Yeah, can't deny that whatsoever. And I really think people shouldn't judge Gav by the results here because
Right.
I've seen his improvement in shows and in training. It just didn't translate this time, but I think he's going to perform very well at World's Strongest Man. So but again, Mitchell Hooper, consistent, finishing behind Thor, but that's what you've got to do. And we talked about the women. The women's is super interesting to watch because, my God, it's all over the place. And as we know, he had an incredible final. But the reason that is, we have not yet got a woman in the sport that is consistently in the top three in every single event. Because if one of them did that, they would win all of these things. But all of them are having, one or two events where they have a big weakness and drop 8-9 points. There's not one that's very consistent. If one can iron those out, we're going to have a woman, I think, that starts dominating.
Yeah, and I know it's always going to be a bias because she has been a friend of mine for a long time. The person that I still think is the most capable is Andrea Thompson. I really do. She has all the tools in her armory to not just win, but to actually dominate. It is the competition element to it. Always sort of said when you looked at the rivalry between Donna Moore and Andrea Thompson, Andrea was way stronger. Donna was the more fierce competitor because that was inherent in her. You combine those two things, you've got someone that's truly unbeatable. But the latter part of that, in terms of competition nows, that's a learnable skill. Align it to the attributes that she's got. I know she's in Masters category now, but Andrea, I still think, has got 2 or 3 years where she could absolutely dominate that.
Mm-hmm. So in the women's, in the end, we had a dead heat for first place, a draw. And very cool. Instead of doing count back or, different things like that, they put an extra event in. It was kind of, on the run there, they just thought of something, what they were going to do exactly. Jan came out and said, I'm not quite sure what weight I'm going to have yet. But it was a cool idea. For the fans. That's something much more exciting, I think. I think everyone was happy about that.
Yeah, and it's knife edge stuff as well.
Yeah.
Because you also feel for both of them because it's literally you're just hanging on for that spot.
Yeah.
And for Luce, I love the girl. She, fair play to the girl that won the Arnold in America. She did brilliantly all the way through. And again, it's another person that looks like she's having fun while she's doing it.
Yeah.
But say Lucy, for someone that I watched down in Evo 5-6 years ago as a spectator through to where she is now, it's quite a buzz. She's an epic person, so it's lovely to see, and that's a big title for her.
Yeah, it was cool, and it was another step forward for the strong women.
She's more than
and of course Jan Todd is a huge champion of strong women. Yeah, I thought that was great. So our final event for the men was the deadlift, 350 kilograms, 772 pounds, and 60-second time limit. Brutal event anyway, but to be the last event, my God.
Yeah.
Mitchell Hooper doing what he needs to do again, finishing in the top 3 as always. That's what he does. It was enough to win the tournament. Keep saying.
He pulled 8.
Yeah, he pulled 8.
Which, again, I know it's a tiny little detail, but that's the one thing where it's gone from, okay, through to actually spot on.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of time for that because you don't need to.
Yeah. He didn't need to, but Rauno had 9, Thor had 10 reps, so he had to be a bit careful in there. So we'll get to that. So Thor won the event. 10 reps, 60 seconds of 350 kilos, 772 pounds. That's a sickening amount of weight to be repping like that at the end of a tournament, isn't it?
Yeah. I've witnessed some incredible sort of deadlifts of late. Going into last year's tournament for the Deadlift World Championships, got Graham Hicks, who looks, when he's on a charge at the moment, on deadlift, looks unbeatable. You've got all these lads coming out the sort of woodwork. You've got lone powerlifter Dave Richardson pulling like 420, I think, was it 420 for 3, grip and rip it. And there's all this talk about people going for the 400 world record.
Mm-hmm.
And then you watch Thor suddenly come along and just go about it like it's a CrossFit exercise with 350, like Rauno, whether he's a master or not, Rauno is absolutely dialed for deadlifting.
Yeah.
He is phenomenal.
Yeah, 9 is crazy on that, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And to go out the way in 60 seconds, it needs to be taken into account. Thor's got a lot more travel than everyone else as well. He's covering a fair amount of distance, but the which he went about there, and let's again not forget, it's only been a hot minute since he decided, I'm going to come back in. Holy shit, give that man a year.
Yeah.
Dangerous. Very, very dangerous.
So, final standings, Mitchell Hooper wins. Credit to the guy. He does what he's got to do in every event. He doesn't have a weak event. That's the secret to it all. Hafthor Bjornsson in 2nd place. 3rd place, Lucas Hatton. So incredible for Lucas on the podium. I think just half a point ahead of Bobby. Bobby, of course, massively fatigued. Look, he would have done more on the log usually if he came in fresh. So big shout out to Bobby to, turn up once again.
Yeah, one of the best athletes over the last 12, 14 months.
Yeah.
And I think the physical changes obviously make a bit of a difference.
Mm-hmm.
I think the advice would always be, trust it, stay the course, because that gives him longevity.
Yeah.
And Bobby looks to me quite an emotional sort of dude. But I think the longer you're in all this, the moment you mix in and start putting them together, I think Bobby's a real threat going forward.
Yeah. And if you're a tournament organizer, that's one of the first names you're going to put on the list, because he's going to be there and be there to the end. And that's what you want from the guys,
Yeah. Passionate.
Yeah.
Shit.
So Hatton in 3rd place, talk about an awesome debut. So that's our real new kid on the block. As I say, he did win America's Strongest Man, so it's not as if, the signs weren't there. But we know now he's the real deal and someone to really look forward to, isn't it?
Yeah, I say, because again, experience-wise, you run that competition 24 hours later with like regen enthusiasm and experience and energy. He's a few points better off.
Yeah.
He's going to be dangerous, that lad.
Now look, Thor finished in the end only 2 points behind Mitchell Hooper. And as you said, Mitchell put a proper shift in. Now Thor dropped 4 points on the log. And Thor, when he gets his pressing back, isn't going to be dropping those points. So Thor is actually almost closing the gap already. At the Arnolds, the points were skewed, but he was within touching distance with 1 event to go. In this one, at the final tally, he's only 2 points behind. Thor, by his next tournament, which is dialed in to be Rogue, he's going to be right there, isn't he?
He is. And I think this is where it gets interesting in terms of how you want the sport to develop. Because if you're looking for the analogy for what Mitchell is to the sport, Mitchell's Mayweather. People are going to turn up because some people obviously will champion him and love him to bits. Other people are going to turn up, they want him to lose. But I tell you what, you have to be special, because I think Thor coming through, also dragging a few along with him. It's going to be. What do I actually think is going to happen? I think you're going to find a lad that raises his game even further, which he is going to go down as an all-time great. I think it's just going to be the next couple of years is going to define how that goes about. Because the first ones, you're always going to upset the apple cart a little bit. You're different. But I think the next couple of years are going to do it. And I think Thor coming back in and just upping the ante a little bit, I think is going to elevate the sport massively. The next couple of years, 3 years, is going to be a very impressive time.
And we must remember the whole picture here, because the MC had a habit of constantly saying Mitchell Hooper already one of the all-time greats, but not talking about Thor like that. With Thor, won 3 back-to-back Arnolds, world's strongest man, everything, 2018, everything. There's one of your all-time greats. It's a bit like, let's remember who we've all got here,
Yeah. But again, and also stood on stage with Sadrunas.
Yeah.
8 times, 4 times world's strongest man. He has a trophy cabinet 3 times the size of my house.
Yeah, we talked about it last week. We don't need to be having these discussions right now. We should enjoy the fact that in Thor, we've got a guy back that is already rivaling Mitchell. And between them, and obviously there's still people like Tom Stoltman and a lot of these other guys. Now we've seen people like Hatton coming through. It's just a lot to look forward to in the upcoming calendar, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think when you have things like this, when you have like whether it be a Ronaldo, Messi era, and you've got people to compare to all the time, look at what that brings along. Look at the Mbappes that come along, the Neymars that come along as well. The standard as an overall gets raised.
Yeah.
And that's what develops the sport, because we can't ignore the extraordinary, and we get to see extraordinary now once every 2 months, not every 2 years.
Okay, mate. Well, I think that rounds it up. I'm going to be back soon with information about the Siberian Power Show. Backwards here on the camera. Yeah, so there's big news coming about that. But thanks as always, mate, for all your input. And guys, let us know in the comments your thoughts about the Arnold UK. We'll be really interested, and I'll answer all of your comments if I can.